Bears Nation podcast, Tuesday, August 9th, the night after Family Fest this morning at Soldier Field, a weird Family Fest on a Tuesday morning, and it was evident with the lack of fans there, but you know who was there? Myself, Kevin Lapka, and this man right here. Actually, it's always inverted on the screen, so whenever I point to the left, I got to point the other way. Kellen Gerenstein was there. We were holding it down for the socials, getting some content, and now we're here to talk about it. Everything we saw today at the Bears open practice at Soldier Field. It wasn't the most exciting practice. It wasn't electrifying, and I think the lack of fans might have had something to do with it. But we were there nonetheless, and we're going to bring you everything that we saw. Kellen, my man, it was a weird morning given the fact that Roquan Smith requested a trade, and we talked about how we did not think it was a coincidence that he did that the day of Family Fest when fans were going to be at Soldier Field and when Ryan Poles was going to be at Soldier Field, and they were both on the field at the same time. No engagement from what we saw there. We were in the fourth row in like section 115, so we were real close to all the action. Got to see a lot of the players firsthand. Got to see a lot of a lot of the action development. So it was good to see. But Kellen, good day today. Good to have you out there and take that in with you. But now we got to break it down.
Absolutely.
I'm Scocks in the chat already. Says, how about my boy Braxton today? He was one of a couple players that we saw that we liked. Just some initial things about practice early on. Again, like I mentioned, it was weird. So we get there, we get down to section 115, and the first thing that Cal and I were looking for as the players walk out is, is Roquan Smith going to come out? That was a big storyline for us because, given what he had put out this morning and what he had sent to Ian Rappaport and the statement that he made, it would not have been shocking if he wasn't there. But he was there, Kellen, and he was involved the entire time as well. Like, it wasn't just, Roquan Smith walks out just to walk out. No, he's going to go back to the tunnel. This guy was on the sidelines. This guy was interacting with his teammates. He was still being a leader amid everything that went on. And about 50 yards on the other side of the field was Ryan Poles looking on. So it was almost like there was tension there that we could kind of feel, we could feel the tension there. But just your reaction real quick to the Roquan Smith news and then to seeing him at practice and what do you think that means for the situation?
Yeah, it's a funny situation because you text me as I was driving on 55 after we had both just left, and you were like, Poles is speaking to the media. So it was just like a tennis match all day, right? We wake up, Roquan wants to be traded, and then he's there, right? He's at practice, and I feel like that is pretty rare. Like, I feel like Deebo Samuel, like, legit probably was like, I don't care if I leave San Francisco, if you trade me, I really don't care. I think Roquan is putting out a bunch of signs that he wants to be in Chicago. Obviously, the money comes first. Money comes before whoever pays him, right? It doesn't matter if he's in Chicago or whatever, but it's weird. And then Poles went on and he talked about how he was a little disappointed that, that we got to this point because he thought that the contract was more fair than what Roquan said it was, but we don't know what it was. And then Poles said that he is trying to get Roquan on the team. So there's some weird things going on because we were this time last week we were like, yeah, Tevin Jenkins is gone. Like, he's probably going to be traded. He's never going to. And now, he was the first one on the field today. Now it's like Tevin Jenkins is playing for the Bears and he might not start this year, but like he's not. It seems like he's not going anywhere like we thought. So we've played this game before on other teams in the NFL, guys who are frustrated with their contracts and they hold out and they say they want to be traded and they request it, and then they get signed. So we'll see. I don't think they're going to let Roquan walk out of the building.
No way.
It would be different. It would be different, I think, if one, he wasn't a top 5 player in his position. Obviously, correct. He is. 2, they've got $89 million cap space. It's not like they're below 35 or below 40. They can afford to pay him. So I think Poles is really trying to take a new approach to changing the Bears because nothing has worked in the past, and he's been around a winning organization. So I think we're just going to see some weird things for this first year. Hopefully not 2 years, but I'm going to try and give both of them the benefit of the doubt and hope that they can just both, put the organization put Roquan can put his future and the organization's future at a good point. And Ryan Poles can do the exact same.
Yeah, we could speculate about the contract, about what it means. I'm going to put it on record today. They get the deal done. I mean, from what I heard from Ryan Poles and his willingness to go out to the press and say, look, I wanted to come present. I really respected that he wanted to be present. He wanted to, let them know what was going on, with the contract negotiations. That's something we didn't see from the previous regime at all, ever. It was always secretive. It was always in the dark. He came out and he said, look, this is the deal. We're going to try to get something done. And I respect him. And look, just real quick, it's people, again, there's people who are like, why don't you just give the man a blank check, tell him to write his number and pay him the money? Like, that is what people want him to do because they think that Roquan Smith is a top 3 linebacker at the position and he's worth, any sort of money that he is asking for. And I would caution to say that because there's multiple things involved here. Roquan Smith is top 3 at his position, but a lot of the conversation today was, well, he doesn't get the same amount of takeaways as Shaquille Leonard or as Fred Warner, and that's sort of the difference between him and those two guys. And what's the most integral thing that Matt Eberflus wants out of his players? Guys who can get the ball, guys who can take the ball away. That's something very, very important. So, and again, anytime you're going to reset the market, it is not easy. It is not easy to just negotiate a contract that is going to be record breaking in multiple ways, and that's going to satisfy the player. I mean, Ryan Poles said in that press conference, there were record breaking aspects to the contract that he proposed to Roquan Smith. Mm-hmm. And there were certain things about it that Roquan didn't like, the de-escalation clauses and, the back end loaded aspect of it. But these things, it's a lot. For the fans out there who are like, just pay him, blank check, pay him. It's a lot more complicated than just, give him whatever he's asking for. Because what you're right about when you think, how is Poles trying to change this team? And one of the ways he's trying to do that is we're just not going to throw money at everyone, right? Yeah. Ryan Pace threw money at everyone, right? He gave Tariq Cohen a contract extension as soon as possible. Gave Eddie Jackson a contract extension as soon as possible, which you can't blame him. He was deserving of it at the time. And then all those veterans, Jimmy Graham type players, right? So I would rather my GM be cautious and smart with his money instead of just say, hey, boom, before we do our due diligence, here's a record-breaking reset the linebacker market contract. So I'm fine with what's going on there. But let's talk training camp today. Again, we were there at Family Fest at Soldier Field. I have a bunch of players that I really liked. So let's start with that. Let's start with the players that we thought stood out.
Sure.
And the guys for me that I thought stood out, I don't know if you have a different list, but these are the guys that I wrote down immediately after practice today while I was on the train and I did my notes. I said Daz Newsome was a guy we talked about all practice. I wouldn't say he stood out, but it's a guy that I liked. It's a guy that I enjoyed watching and I thought looked better. Braxton Jones is a guy that we liked. And seeing him, I haven't been to training camp this year. He is a lot bigger than I thought, and that's something I noted. And Simba Webster, we liked him. He looked quick. He looked nimble, scored a touchdown. Don Burr is already in the chat. Here we go. I'm not even going to read that yet. Jalen Johnson, again, that's an all-pro talent at cornerback, in my opinion. Yep. Of course, he's going to look good. Thought Cole Kmet had some nice plays, and then Rice and John, the other tight end, who's currently, was getting a lot of reps at the first team, I thought looked good. But those are the guys that I thought stood out. Who did you have penned out as some of the guys that really stood out for you today when we were there?
I would put all of those names. I think I might take Cole Kmet out just because.
Of course you would.
Yeah,
only you would do it. You're so biased.
I think we talked about it because our seats where we were, the tight ends did their indie drills right in front of us. Not the indie drills at the end of the world or beginning of it, whatever. He's just not an explosive guy.
Correct.
And not that you're asking for that from the tight end position, but I always go back to this. Bears fans who listen to me, probably they hate that I consistently talk about it. It's the fact that where he was drafted at, like that second round tight end spot where they got him at, it's just you expect a little bit more. Now, is he going to be productive? Is he probably going to see a lot of targets? Is he going to be a solid player? I mean, let's hope, especially in this new offense, they're going to find a way to make him that. But I didn't see too much. And then I'll put Michael Schofield. I thought Michael Schofield, I didn't get to see him a lot, you can't really go back and watch practice. You only get to see it once. And then, you took videos, but we're not re-scrubbing through them and trying to break it down, but just from peeping through, I thought Michael Schofield looked really athletic. at guard, especially in this offense where, you're trying to move guys vertically in that zone scheme, and, you're trying to displace guys in that way. And there was the one play you posted where David Montgomery, I think, cut it back on like an outside zone play.
Yeah, it was a good
Seemed
run.
like the Schofield, like he seals, I think, either seals or he works his way up to the second level to the backer, and then spins his way out and puts like an inside seal on the overhang player, which allows Demo to cut back. You'll see it if you go back and watch it, but like he literally like spinned like he was like a defensive end. I was like, dang, that's a guard. Like that's pretty nice. Like good for him. So I'll put that. But all the other guys you said, absolutely. We talked about Daz and Simba. We talked about Jalen Johnson. You said that guy's a Pro Bowl corner, and he absolutely is. He'll probably win as many reps against John Mooney as he loses. Like that's a really good battle in practice. So I'd definitely say I'd add Schofield for sure.
Add Mooney. I forgot to put Mooney on there, of course.
But otherwise, I thought your list was pretty spot on. Braxton Jones looked pretty good. I didn't get a good look at Tevin Jenkins and Larry Borom. I wish I did, but from what I saw, it didn't look like Tevin Jenkins was hindered by whatever's been holding him back in the past. I mean, all his reps were just in and out. He was playing full contact, all that, so that was good.
Yeah, so let's talk. I want to talk a little bit more about Cole Kmet, and I want to talk about these wide receivers. So when we talk about not seeing the explosiveness from Cole Kmet, it was really, like Kellen said, we were right there in front of the tight end drills. And, Kellen and I are both athletes. We can tell explosiveness and when it's there and when it's not. Like we do these drills ourselves. We do these explosiveness drills, and we know how they're supposed to be done, and we can see explosiveness. We're both explosive players, and we know what it looks like. Yeah. And they're doing one drill, right? It's just a simple cone drill. But sometimes these are the drills when it's most evident. Right? It's a simple cone drill. They're hopping. They hop from cone to cone, and then the last cone, they step, and then after that step, they have to accelerate and get to the cone. It's just like you're getting out of a break. You're trying to get to a spot type deal. That's the purpose of that drill. And I'm watching it, and I think you were looking at your phone at first, and I'm like, man, he just doesn't look explosive. Yeah. And look, a lot of tight ends don't, but I was saying, like, imagine George Kittle on this show. Like, it's the moment he hits that cone, it's boom, it's a burst, and it's a noticeable explosiveness. And you just don't see that with Cole Kmet. Does that mean he can't be an 800-yard receiver? No. But when you talk about him being an upper echelon tight end, the best of the best as a runner, as a route runner, as a receiving tight end, we didn't see that type of explosiveness. Now, I will say the way he's explosive coming off of the block, that is really, like, he's explosive in that sense. And there's different types, right? Like there's explosiveness coming out of a crouch, right? And this was a lot of the conversation around Khalil Mack, actually, and the way he pass rushed was, well, he's not as explosive coming out of the crouch versus standing up. But when I watched Cole Kmet, I saw that explosiveness and I saw that power specifically when he was doing the blocking drills, and he looked really good. And that's something we already know about Cole Kmet, is he's a relatively solid blocker. But as a receiver, as a guy who's going to be able to generate acceleration and get separation, I don't know. Like, I just think that's an aspect of his game, and people might already know this. We might already know this, that is just not going to be there. With that being said, he did have a good day in team drills. We thought he looked good. He made a lot of catches, and they were doing a lot of concepts getting him over the middle of the field. I don't know if you could really tell a lot of the concepts we were doing. I know you pointed out drive concept was something that they were working on in the early team drills. But did you notice at all, in whether it was Cole Kmet, Rice and John, or guys in the second and third team, their sort of eagerness to get tight ends over in the middle of the field, which is something that people have been talking about, and, as an important aspect of this offense, is get those guys in the middle of the field, get them open in the middle of the field. Did you notice that at all?
Yeah, in the middle of the field and the flats. I think those are the two areas where tight ends in general in the NFL are really going to excel at, and these guys especially, just because they're not field stretchers. And I liked Rice and John today. Like, I was like, oh, that dude's big. That dude's making catches. He's going up for the ball. So there was some good stuff I saw from him. They're just not going to be guys that are going to make like those catches up the seam 25 yards down the field against like, a safety like a Jaquan Brisker or just, any guy that can cover. Now they can probably carry a linebacker, and I think Justin Fields is accurate enough to hit it because he did it last year against Pittsburgh. But they're probably going to want to have those guys in that intermediate 8 to 15 yards over the middle. And then, we talked about this today. Cole Kmet isn't the greatest guy in the world after the catch. He's not Kittle after the catch. He's not Kelsey and Darren Waller before it. So but he's somewhere in the middle. He's somewhere in that like average to above average tier with that. He's obviously going to fight. I think it really helps that he plays for the Bears. He just has that extra edge that he likes this team. He likes this franchise. He's been a fan of it. And it's kind of caused him to get in trouble in the past, with fumbles, in the Packers especially. But I think he'll be fine. He's not going to be a world beater. I don't think he's gonna. Here's where I come to grips with him just not being great. Is like, let's look at like Dallas Goedert,
Yeah.
another second round tight end.
Yeah.
You never, or Mark Andrews, who was drafted after that. You're just not taking Cole Kmet over those guys. Bears
Correct.
probably won't like this, but Cole Kmet's probably on the same level as a guy like Hayden Hurst, who was a first round pick and got traded, but like, I don't know, he's just not a world beater. I'd rather have Cole Kmet than Evan Ingram. But that's not really saying much. So he's a middle of the road tight end. He's probably somewhere in that like 14th to 18th best tight end in the NFL.
I think he can be a little bit higher than that.
What do you
I
say?
mean, I'm trying to think like 10 to 14. Let's go up
Okay.
4. And really I think from a production standpoint, he's going to be up there. I really do. I mean, like he's just, again, given the lack of weapons on this offense, he's going to need to play an essential role, and he's going to get a lot of targets because of that. But it's something that I am Scotch just put in the chat. Just need some TDs from Cole.
Absolutely.
They absolutely right. Now, they ran a few red zone drills today, and we didn't see them. They didn't throw the ball once when Field was inside of the 10.
No, they only had 2 reps in the red zone with the ones.
Only
weird.
2 reps, so we can't. Yeah, that was weird. But I don't even know if Cole Kmet was on the field for one of them. And then both of the plays that we saw there inside of the 10, it was pocket broke down, Justin Fields ran for the touchdown, which isn't bad because that is such an asset for you inside of the 10-yard line. It unlocks a world of possibilities for you there in the red zone. So that's huge. Let's talk about those wide receivers, all right? We talked about Daz Newsome and Simba Webster as 2 players that we thought stood out. And look, they sort of had to stand out because David Moore went down today right near us in the corner of the end zone. He fell awkwardly on a one-on-one rep, sort of a fade ball, and trainers were looking at his knee. The cart got pulled over. If I had to guess, it's an ACL for David Moore. So you're going to lose that. So, there's another opportunity for a guy like Daz Newsome or a guy like Simba Webster to step up and make a play. And, we didn't see a ton from Daz in the team periods from what I could tell. Mm-hmm. He made a great play over a defensive back, not Ravens quarterback, Lamar Jackson. He kind of mossed him there in the corner of the end zone. We noticed that. But also just in his individual drills, running his routes and even returning punts, something that I noticed is, man, he looks really quick and he looks really fast. And I didn't go to camp last year. I didn't play any games last year, so I don't even know how fast he looks. So I'm not really sure if he's looking faster than when he looked last year, but he looked smooth running his routes. He was coming out of his breaks well. He looked like a guy who, might be an asset to this team. What did you think of Daz Newsome? Do you think what we saw today is sort of just I don't know. Is it real? Is it just guys doing drills and individuals and us making something out of nothing? Or what did you think?
I think that's just the toughest part about evaluations in general, right? Like, is this just like him being good against air or what? But we said it to each other. Like, it seemed like he had an extra gear.
Yes.
Like an extra step today, like for whatever reason. Just like breaking down and being fast. Like, he's not like a burner like Velus Jones is, but he still looked like he was able to stretch the field, and he was breaking guys off on routes and one-on-ones, and he had that nice catch against Lamar Jackson. So I think he is going to make the 53, especially now with the injuries. If not the 53, he'll definitely be on the practice squad because, if we could do it later, but we can try and like pick out the receivers that are going to make the squad. But it'll be tough for both him. I think both him and Simba Webster are deserving of at least getting a shot at a spot. The problem comes when like Velus Jones is your starter, and then you're obviously keeping Pringle, Mooney, and Jones, and then probably EQ St. Brown.
Mm-hmm. You're keeping him.
N'Keal Harry and David Moore going down obviously doesn't help. So, it helps them for their chances to get on the roster. Doesn't help the Bears, but we'll see, man. I think it makes things a little bit more clear. Unfortunately, you made the tweet about N'Keal Harry going down, and now the Bears might have to pick up another free agent. So it'll probably, I think target one has to be Will Fuller, just because I don't think OBJ will be back till like November or something like that. So got to be something like that.
Yeah. Will Fuller, Emmanuel Sanders is a guy who's still out there. One of those guys would be great. Matt in the chat, I really want to see what Harry could bring. Yeah, there was a little, we thought he could be a threat in the red zone as sort of that pure X receiver, go up and get it type guy. You trade him for a 7th round pick. He should be back by the opener, I believe. He's got a high ankle sprain. The recovery for a high ankle sprain can be a very long time, though. It can be more than a month at times. And given the timetable right now, he might not be ready week 1. And then you start to raise the question, if you like what Daz Newsome and Simba Webster brings to the table, do you cut N'Keal Harry? And I know there's some people who say, well, why the hell would you cut him, right? You traded for him. Why would you cut a guy you traded for? Well, because you can create a 7th round pick out of thin air, right? You can trade down 2 picks in the 6th round and get yourself an extra 7th. I wouldn't be too worried about that, but I seriously think there's a legitimate chance if they sign a free agent and then there's guys like Dez Newsome and Simba Webster that are on their radar. Without a doubt, I think N'Keal Harry could be a potential cut player. I think without a doubt. And Simba Webster scored a touchdown today, right at us in the corner of the end zone. You said something to me when that happened. You said, I think it was similar to today. You said you thought he looked really quick, and I think you said you liked the way they were using him, and you said you thought he could be sort of like a gadget for the offense. Tell me what you saw from Simba Webster and why, because he's a name that, like, people know the name Daz Newsome. He was a 6th round draft pick last year. People know, he was on our podcast famously on the Bears Nation podcast last year. People know the name sort of, right? And Simba Webster was just kind of plucked out of nowhere, and people are like, no one is talking about that guy to make the roster. Sort of make the case here, Kellen, for why Simba Webster could be a dark horse to make the 53.
Sure. He definitely brings special teams value as a returner. If you're trying to keep like guys fresh, like I know Velus Jones is a hell of a returner, but if you don't want him to be on that return, consistently, Webster's your guy. But I just thought, and this was last Wednesday too, I thought he just looked quick. Like like Ace Harrison style, like classic Jacksonville, like 2013. Like that's what he kind of reminded me of. It's like refreshing to see. He's small, so that's gonna be where like the big thing for him comes from. But when he scored, the Bears were in 2-minute and they weren't kicking a field goal. Like they were telling their guys, like, we got to get into the end zone. So there was like 2 seconds left, and the defense just all backed off. So they had 4 guys, 4 down linemen, and then 7 were playing like deep.
Yeah.
So instead of trying for Trevor Siemian, Nathan Peterman, whoever it was, to try and fit it in a zone of 7 guys, they alerted, and then they just threw this tunnel screen out to Webster, and they had 5 guys out there blocking. It was actually like really smart. Like it makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like you're about to throw a Hail Mary, but instead of a Hail Mary, you like let everyone back off, and then the Chiefs threw it to Tyreek Hill, right? And then like let 3-4 blocks set up and let him read it, and he scores. It's obviously he's not Tyreek Hill. I'm not saying he is, but it's similar to that aspect. And that play was, and clearly he's a guy they wanted. He's the best guy with the ball in his hands among that like second string of receivers. So because you're not giving him the ball, you're not giving like Chris Finke or like
he looked good today. Chris Finke looked good today. He scored a touchdown as well.
You're just not gonna get him the ball or like Tajay Sharp, who actually was getting some first team reps. But like I just thought Simba Webster looked better than all those guys today.
Yeah, I thought so. So that's definitely a dark horse candidate to make the 53. Let's talk about a guy who we know is going to make the 53. At least we believe in, Equanimous St. Brown. He again, there's nothing about him that pops when you're there. There's nothing about him that is just like, oh shit, because like those things are evident sometimes. Even those things are obviously evident in Darnell Mooney, and they can be evident, I think, at times with Velus Jones Jr. He wasn't out there today; he was injured. But from what you said last Wednesday, and I'm sure they're evident with a guy like Byron Pringle. I didn't like. He looked good. He looked fine. He looked good. But and this is who he is. I think. Like, I don't know if we should be expecting him to have oh shit moments. He's a guy you paid. What'd you pay, like $2 million, $3 million for the guy, and he was never that productive in Green Bay. But something that you mentioned to me, because I'm sitting there, and again, I haven't been to a practice this year, so when I'm seeing a lot of the size of these guys, I take that into note, and I was like, holy crap, this guy's bigger than I thought. Like, you can see the numbers on paper, and you're like, okay, I think he's 6'4", 6'5" on paper, but he just looks bit like he's a strong guy too. And what you said to me was, when N'Keal Harry out, does he sort of slot in to be that X receiver, go up and get a guy that they are going to need in the red zone when it's not Cole Kmet making those plays?
Yeah.
So we didn't see a lot of that in the red zone drills, but EQ is making some plays today. Nothing crazy, but he was making some plays. What did you think about him?
Yeah, I think that they're going to play him just because he has the relationship with Getsy and the experience in the offense. We talked about this last week. He's going to play. It's just that separation factor, and that's why I said to you today, like, that might be the dark horse red zone target, because they've actually, we'll talk about this later too, how they're using Darnell Mooney and all these spaces. It's actually really creative. But if you want like a big body guy in the red zone, that's your guy. But then again, like last year we had Jimmy Graham, but sometimes in the NFL, I think it's the term or the phrase like Jimmys and Joes over X's and O's rings true at all stages of football, 100%. That's why you pay the better players more money. I know we're all in the NFL, but some players are better than others, right? That's just what it is. But you can get away with just throwing it up to a guy a little better in high school and college than you can in the NFL, especially when that guy is Jimmy Graham or EQ St. Brown, at least in this stage of his career. Not Saints Jimmy Graham, obviously. Like, that's a much better matchup and higher percentage throw. But now I'm sure Luke Getsy is trying to scheme guys open in the red zone. They're practicing those high red zone, reps, because that's exactly what they want. They don't want, just like we talked about this last week too. Just we're running 5 fades on the goal line and trying to throw 3 back shoulders in a row to Cole Kmet, Allen Robinson, whoever it was. Like, that's just not good coaching, in my opinion. Like, if you want to take your shot on first down, sure, but those are all low percentage throws into like, be like, well, my guy is just going to get it on one of those 3. Like, that's great. And I like, that's a good mind to have as far as confidence in your players, but I don't know if that's like the smartest thing to do. So back to EQ St. Brown, I don't know if Luke Getsy is just going to be like, let me give this guy, this low percentage ball, when instead of, trying to use 1, Darnell Mooney, or 2, a guy like David Montgomery, who's a pretty underrated receiver, in my opinion.
Yes.
Mismatches in the red zone, or a guy, Simba Webster. All you need in the red zone, you don't need a lot of time. You just need a guy to make one cut, and that ball's got to be there. You don't have a lot of time to read it out. But if your guy can get open off of, a simple move, that ball's got to be on him. But, I mean, that's where those guys come in handy. Sometimes red zone targets aren't just big body catchers, right?
Correct.
They're not always that. But if the Bears want that, I think outside of Cole Kmet and probably Rice and John, who is, also another dark horse to make the roster, they've got to go with EQ St. Brown.
Yeah, it's an option for them. Let's talk Darnell Mooney. You said the way they used him was creative. Okay, first of all, the guy went crazy today, as usual. I mean, he's clearly the best player on the offense, in my opinion. Like, he's like, maybe Dave Montgomery is right there with him. But like, talk about popping and talking about just like when you watch the practice, like, you notice number 11. He's all over the field. He's making plays. He's torching guys one-on-one. He's making one-handed catches that are going viral on Instagram. Like, this is who he is. And people, I think, literally, I guess all it took was one-handed interception, because now people are coming to me like, oh, wait, you might be right. He might be a 1,200-yard receiver. He might be the legitimate wide receiver 1. And I'm like, all it took, like, it took a one-handed catch on Twitter for you to realize that. Like, we knew this, like, and this is the reality of it. But what you said that you want to hint at was, you think the way that they're using him is very, very creative. From what you saw today, how they used him, what encourages you about, what Luke Getsy's doing with Darnell Mooney?
Yeah, that first red zone rep, that was really cool. And this is something that LSU did with Justin Jefferson in 2019, is they'll put him in the backfield. And actually, the Bears did this with Jakeem Grant a couple times.
Yeah, he was in the backfield.
Yeah,
yes.
So like, they would like motion him in to create the mismatch, because then you would have to shift, because you're not going to bring your corner into the box. So then a linebacker has to cover him. So that's exactly what they did with Darnell Mooney today. Khalil Herbert was the Z receiver, and Darnell Mooney was the running back. And all they did was run, it's not a Texas route. It's more of an option route. But it was Nick Morrow, I think, who was on him, shuffles his hips outside. And I said it to you as soon as I saw it. I'm like, this is an option route for Mooney. He's going to read right off that line. Or I thought it was Brisker, but it was going to be Morrow. And Justin Fields ended up running in anyway, because I think there was some pressure in his face. But it was good to see. And even Matt Nagy had some creative ways to use Darnell Mooney last year, but I wasn't like particularly happy with them. Like the touchdown run he had against Pittsburgh, like we're running Wildcat with Justin Fields as our quarterback. Like you don't have to do that. Like the whole point of having a guy like that is so you don't have to do things like that. So
right,
it's gonna be fun, man. He's probably a little bit better as like a guy who can actually carry the ball as a number one than a guy like Devontae Adams. You're gonna find creative ways to get that guy the ball, but you're not gonna like hand it off to him in the backfield or like stuff that the 49ers do with Debo or that the Bengals do with the rocket sweeps with Jamar Chase, stuff like that. Like you're not doing that with Devontae Adams. So it's a little bit different with a guy like Mooney, especially in those areas where it's the red zone and you can key those mismatches. You can literally create them because you know that if your defense in the red zone isn't really going to sit back and spot drop. So it's going to be fun, especially in that red zone. They just got to get there. That's the tough part is working their way down the field and finding ways to get first downs consistently. But outside of that, I mean, I loved it. I really loved that play. I wish I would have saw Fields step away and toss it to Mooney. But if you look at it, Jaquan Brisker did a really good job of coming over the top and covering for Morrow. They kind of bracketed him, but touchdown's a touchdown, man, especially when you got an athlete like that at quarterback.
It's very hard to tell, I think, in those team drills, like when the defense is doing well, because you can't tackle and because the players in camp just keep running. Like if Darnell Mooney, like the defender will tap him and then he'll just keep running just to finish out the rep. Like that's what they do. So it's hard to tell how the defense did today. It wasn't hard to tell up front. That was evident. Like you could tell they were getting the push, and it's sort of the same thing though, because if they get that push, like it's. Although they're there, the quarterback just stays in there and they still release the ball and they still try to get it to a receiver, although it would have been a sack. And there was a number of times that happened. But the question I wanted to pose to you was, who do you think won the day? Because a lot of this the past few days in camp and really the whole time has been, defense is winning the day. Defense is dominating the day. Defense is taking over. Everyone on the defensive side looks better and the offense is struggling. I wouldn't say there was that clear of a divide today. I personally would say I thought the defense, quote unquote, won the day, but I don't think it was the defense is dominating, the offense is in shambles. Did the offense look phenomenal and great and the cleanest and smoothest it could possibly be? Absolutely not. But I wouldn't say that they were dominated by the defense. Is that how you would put it as well?
Sure, absolutely.
And so the guys that we thought stood out defensively, again, it was hard to tell for me, especially because there's still some of the numbers I'm trying to get familiar with these guys. I thought, again, Jalen Johnson really stood out. I thought Jaquan Brisker was okay. I like what you mentioned about him getting in there on that Fields touchdown run. It looked like he was present. He was lined up in the slot a couple times against Rice and John, against Cole Kmet, and that's not surprising. We know he's going to do that. It was hard to tell the guys up front. Did you notice Kairos Tonga or Justin Jones? Actually, Justin Jones might have not been practicing. I can't remember. But did you notice anyone up front who was really getting after it? I couldn't tell.
No, I didn't notice a big difference. I actually thought the offensive line for the most part was solid, at least compared to what I saw last week. Especially Braxton Jones, as far as there you go. So you're right on time, my boy.
You're right on time. How did you know?
Braxton Jones did a really good job of cutting the corner off on Robert Quinn. I mean, it was Braxton Jones versus Robert Quinn every pass rush rep, and every time Justin Fields had room to step up. Now you have to see Braxton Jones. You have to see him do that against power rushers, guys that are going to rush straight through his chest, because Robert Quinn's not that guy. He's always going to try and bend the corner, dip, win. That way he's not going to win with power. So you have to see Braxton Jones stand up to guys like that, which I think is a big thing to keep an eye on this Saturday in the game. Not that like he'll be going up against Chris Jones, because he's not playing. But just going forward, that's going to be where he'll have to earn his money. I'll say. But the offensive line I thought was all right. I really hope Lucas Patrick can get back. Sam Mustipher is who he is. There's just nothing more for us to see from him. He's a backup, and he's a smart guy, but just not a guy you want starting for your offensive line. But when they shore that up and they figure the rest of it out, like Larry Borum and Tevin Jenkins could be their backups, because Reef was at right tackle and
Borum was
Jones
getting
got all the
second team
reps at
reps.
left, so
Yeah.
that's not a bad sixth and seventh lineman. That's not terrible. It's
Oh, that's
the
not bad at all.
absolutely. Like I'm not frustrated with that. I'm not mad at that. Like I said, I thought Michael Schofield had a really good day today.
Yeah, and look, it's worth noting that when the offensive linemen were also near us too, specifically the tackles. The tackles were practicing near us and the individual drills, and Tevin Jenkins was there the whole time. So I think we can, and he was with I think he was on the left side today.
He was on the right.
He was on the right. Okay, he was on the right side today. I couldn't remember. And he wasn't at guard. There's he's gonna play guard. There's all this. He's gonna play interior. I think we can put that away, honestly. I think at this point, like, he is going to be the swing tackle, or he's going to be just, the backup right tackle, or if he starts to do really well in camp in the preseason, maybe he lifts himself and elevates himself to be a starter. Like, I still think that's open. But about the line, something I noticed today was I didn't think the pass blocking was great, but the run blocking looked really good. I mean, we pointed out a number of times that there were ginormous holes for David Montgomery, and we noticed that. Appreciate you, Sir Mav, in the chat. We noticed that the holes were there for Dave Montgomery a couple times, and I think even Khalil Herbert had a couple lanes to run. I thought the run blocking looked really, really good, and if this is going to be a run-dominant offense, frankly, I know we want to, Justin Fields to have time, but that run blocking is going to be just as important, if not more important, if you're going to run the ball 60 times a game. So what did you think of that run blocking today? Because, we noticed those holes. Again, it's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell when guys aren't tackling and you really don't know, how far Dave Montgomery really got, what the run really was, but from the jump, like after he got the ball, it looked like he had room to run. He wasn't running into a brick wall, which is, I'm sure, a breath of fresh air for Dave Montgomery after the past few years. It's just a giant hole. It's exactly what he's looking for. But your thoughts on the run offense today? I thought it looked good.
Yeah, me too. I think they did a really good job of getting guys that really fit the scheme, that really, that are experienced and their skill set is for this wide zone, play action, offense. I keep talking about the athleticism of Michael Schofield, and that's great, and that's good because you're pulling guards and stuff like power and counter and trap and whatnot. So that's awesome. Whitehair, Cody Whitehair, I feel like has peaked. He's probably, not going to be the player he was in his prime, which is fine. He's been around a while now, so he's consistent at the very least. Riley Reef is a capable starter. Braxton Jones, we have to see more from him, but from what we saw in practice, did a really good job against those speed rushers. So I like it. You know what? This isn't about the offensive line necessarily. This is more Justin Fields, but I think there's got to be a bit more trust developed between the O-line and between Fields, because one thing I noticed today was Justin likes to drift left in the pocket. That's always, I don't know why that's always his first move. It's I think it might just be a thing of just shifting toward where he can see, especially if his eyes start that way in the progression, which probably a habit he'll want to break and probably will break. But I think that, that's coming with a guy that two of his starters are guys that were just signed in the last 2 weeks. And, another one is a rookie. And another guy who he's taking snaps from is not going to be the guy who he's taking snaps from during the season. So it's probably just a weird process for him right now. Pro football is different than college football, and knowing the guys come and go on a day-to-day basis. It's not, like college football. So I don't know. I think he's going to have to get used to, or just gain some trust with that group. But outside of that, I thought they pass blocked well, which is why I bring up that bad habit. I don't think he had to be drifting that way. I don't really think he was evading a lot of rushers by doing that. I think it was something that was in his mind that he felt he had to do, when I don't think he should have.
Yeah. And let's talk Fields here real quick, because There's something that you brought up to me in practice that I thought was really, really interesting. And, obviously the narrative around Justin Fields all offseason was always going to change the motion. He's going to make it a quicker motion, a faster motion. How is he doing that? How is that progressing? And, we thought it looked good today. We thought it looked quick, but you told me, you're like, it's nothing that different. But what you also told me, and I want to see if I got a football in the closet here, because I want you to, do you have a football nearby you?
Yeah, I got one.
So for those of you who don't know, Kellen Garrison here, he plays club football at Ohio State. He's probably the best quarterback who doesn't play college football at the actual NCAA level. All right. This guy knows what the hell he's talking about when it comes to playing the quarterback position. And what you're talking to me about was, Justin Fields' arm angle and how a lot of the new quarterbacks are being taught a different way to throw. So we're going to kind of visualize it here. Show me what you're talking about. The way these quarterbacks are throwing now, that is being taught differently from what it was before when you're talking about the hip torso and stuff like that. We're going to do sort of a visual breakdown here.
Yeah. So I think when a lot of people visualize a quarterback, we're like coming over the top like this, like I'm keeping my elbow high and I'm like this L is happening here. A lot of guys now are dropping this angle to kind of like in between, like a 3/4 kind of.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see a lot of guys are doing that now. You watch Brady. Obviously, Rodgers, Josh Allen's doing it. Kyler Murray is doing it. Lamar Jackson is doing it. Russell Wilson's still kind of like an over-the-top thrower. But for the most part, like all those guys are trying to get more rotational velocity because if you're coming here, you're bringing your arm down.
Yeah.
Follow-through is happening at your hip. So I'm following through and I'm down here. What a lot of guys now are doing is they're trying to finish at the rib cage. Trey Lance is like the best example of it. Because his ball like will dip, and he is literally like his arm angle is more like almost dead ass sidearm, and they'll finish here. But the idea, I think, for I'm not the best quarterback trainer in the world, but just from what I've learned and what I've tried to study, is this is all trying to get rotational velocity from the hips, right? Like we're trying to eliminate a lot of the stuff that's going on with the upper body, not try and focus on that, and try and get everything going in this torque. Right, we're trying to torque, and we're trying to keep our shoulders square. Because if I'm throwing like this, a lot of times this is uneven, right? Like this is going in a line like this. If I'm throwing from this side, from this action over here, I got more stability along that like horizontal plane. So it's a lot, and I don't think too much of it makes a difference, but I do think that it shortens the stroke for a lot of guys, and it feels a little bit more natural, and I think it eliminates arm pain as well. So this shoulder is going to feel a little bit better coming from here than it is up here.
That's surprising almost because, as baseball players, anytime you try to go with the sidearm throw, like there's always more pain, but it's typically like the elbow area. So if you're talking about shoulder, you're right. So when you talk about, for those who are listening to this in the podcast form, I'm sorry that we're doing this little visual representation. You can watch what we're talking about on YouTube. This video will be available on our page for forever. So whenever you want to get to it, you can watch what we're talking about here. But for that torque, so are they doing that? They're trying to get more torque just so they get a little bit more zip on the ball? Is that okay?
Yeah. So what I always describe it as like, are you a plateau thrower or are you an apex thrower? Does your ball just carry and then apex and then it's back down? Or do you have the velocity to get like a plateau on it and for it to be at its top speed for not an extended period of time, but for longer than just a moment? That's how I kind of describe it. And it really is big on those drive throws outside of the numbers and those, intermediate to deep throws in between the hashes in the middle of the field. I think that's where it makes the most difference. And also, it helps getting the ball around defenders, right? I think a lot of times.
Oh, he does that all the time.
Yeah. People confuse like, almost every quarterback in football is shorter than his offensive lineman. So it's really never about like seeing over guys. Like everyone finds a window, unless you're like Trevor Lawrence, Brock Osweiler, Mike Glennon. Those guys are really tall. But for the most part, like Brady, Rodgers. Those guys aren't like, they're not towering over their tackles. They're not towering over their guards. So all those guys have to find windows and they have to find angles where they can whip it around, and anticipate throws. So that's what has changed the most to me about Justin Fields' motion. I think a lot of people really overdid it. Like Dan Orlovsky had that segment on ESPN before the draft. I'll never forget it, where he was comparing like the times of time to like when the ball separated to when it was getting released, and Justin Fields was so much longer than everyone else. And that's it, it's longer. It happens, but you live with it, because I said to you today, it's loopy. It was loopy, but it was snappy. So I never had a huge problem with it. And I'm glad he has shortened it even more than it, that's always a good thing, shortening your release. But keep an eye on that when you watch quarterbacks this year. See how many of them are finishing this throw here, instead of like down at the hip area.
Yeah, and that's actually really, as you talk about the torque and the force and the momentum that he's getting on his throws, turning his body, I mean, that's something that I really noticed about him. And compared to other guys, it's like when you watch him, like he's really whipping that body around, and like and his ball just has some natural zip to it, man. Like you can tell, like that ball has some zip, even when he's just warming it up. We were watching him warming up. I was like, damn, like that ball has zip on it, and almost seemed like a little bit more zip than last year again. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that he's just he whips that body around. He really uses his body to an advantage. And I feel like, again, take a guy like Mitch, right? And, and I'm just using Mitch because he's the most recent example I have from like a visual standpoint. Is like that guy almost, it seemed like he was like all arm the way he threw, right? Like he was all arm. You didn't see a lot of the body incorporated in the way he was throwing the ball. Like there wasn't a lot of torque when he threw the ball, and like he could zip it. Like Mitch could zip it in there at times, but like from a mechanics point, from what you're talking about with like, okay, this is, the new mechanics where you're dropping that arm slide and you're trying to get that body around and maximum torque. Like that's not there for a guy like him. And for a lot of guys in the league who, just don't have that zip. And it's like, and this is a common thing in sports. Like it's the same way for baseball. And it's like a lot of it comes from the legs as well. And that's why people talk about, getting your footing right, right. I mean, and tell me like the importance of the legs there as well, because in baseball, that's the sport that I play. Like, if I'm in center field and I'm launching it home, oh my God, my arms can be destroyed if I don't use my legs to my advantage. Like you really have to get your legs into it. But when you're a quarterback and you're standing still, like, is there anything with his legs? Because all the talk has been arm rotation. Did you see anything in the legs that you thought needed to be changed?
The stride is shorter.
Okay.
I always had this problem when I was getting trained in high school. Matt Slusher, who used to coach at Crete, I'm in Flossmoor, so we're south suburbs. Coach Slush, if you're watching this, appreciate you. But the thing with me was I was always trying to as I move my chair and get up, right? This is funny. I was always trying to overemphasize this step, that they call it like a foot strike, or, whatever happens. Like if I'm boxing, I'm taking that step. I was always trying to overstep. And when I did that, when I came to throw, my leg, you can't see it because my computer just doesn't get like that, but my leg was locked, so I was coming over my front foot. Right. So a lot of times I think with young quarterbacks, that's a lot of what they're doing, because they think they just have to really stride and try and get as much like force on that front foot.
Okay.
You're trying to balance it as much. You're trying the same weight that was on your back foot before the throw should be the same amount of weight on your front foot when you're throwing. So now notice that stride with Justin Fields, it's not all the way here. It's just boom. Like it's kind of in the same spot you pick it up from. Pick it up and put it down. So that's a big thing. And to any young quarterbacks who are out there watching this, or just people who like the position and want to learn more about it, that's a big thing. When you're coaching someone, teach them to not lock their front leg out. Don't take that big foot strike step. So that's cool. I love talking. As you can tell, I love talking QB mechanics.
Oh, I love it. That's why I wanted to get you. I knew this is what you love to do. So I was like, I gotta get him in his element. But it's relevant stuff because we've seen the reports. I don't know if you saw this, and of course, the clickbait of Bears Facebook. I've seen it all over. But I don't know who the hell said it. But one guy said he's heard from a source that Justin Fields is, quote, having like the most significant jump from year 1 to year 2 from a quarterback that people have ever seen. Right. Oh my God. It's the biggest jump ever. I'm not going to buy into that. Right. Like we think Justin Fields is good enough regardless. I'm not going to say, oh my God, he's making the biggest jump year 1 to year 2 of all.
That's just setting him up for unrealistic expectations.
Yeah. And also, like, what does that even mean? Right. Like, how do you even quantify that? Right. So I don't get what that means. But nonetheless, like there's differences, right? There's changes and there's positive changes. Like, and you want to see those positive changes. Like those things matter. And we see it in the mechanics, and, it's positive stuff that, he's getting the ball out quick. And man, the arm angles with this guy, like again, this is part of his baseball background, and I noticed it because they do a lot when they were doing that play action delay that I posted on Instagram, right? Where this is huge, right? This is how Aaron Rodgers torched us every fucking time on national television, right? I don't even know if I can do it here. I think because he takes a snap and then he like fakes the handoff and then he like fakes the ball. Yeah. He puts his hand here and he kind of tucks the ball in, and then he rolls out. And every time he's rolling out, he's throwing it like he's throwing it like this. I got a torn shoulder, so it's hard for me to do this motion. But like every time he's getting the ball there and that arm angle. And like when you think about the way they're going to use him in play action and getting the ball out quick to just to the flat to like a Darnell Mooney, like he's using that arm angle, and that's where he's at his best. I think when he's doing those types of throws is when you're like, holy shit. Like think about the throw against San Francisco last year. You know that one is cross body throw. Yeah. Justin James, right? Jesse James. Or Jesse. Sorry, Jesse James. I think he did it to Mooney. He might have done it to Mooney in the series game. I don't know, but you know what I'm talking about. Like that's where Justin Fields is going to elevate himself. And I said this to you. I said this is, and you said, this is all the young quarterbacks now. Like this is how they take it to the next level. Absolutely. This is what separates Justin Fields from the rest of the pack, and why we think he's going to be a top quarterback in the NFC for the rest of his career.
That's one thing that Mitch really struggled with, was changing that arm angle. If he had to get it around somewhere, he really couldn't throw from here. Mitch was always kind of up here, and it just limits the plays that you as a quarterback can make. It doesn't really limit you as a play caller, but like you can only do so much as a coach. That's why you draft good football players. That's why you sign good football players. We talked about it earlier. That's why it's so important, and that's why the whole Mac Jones over Trey and Justin at for San Francisco at 3, that discourse was really killing me, because he can't do those things. And Mac is good. His ceiling is just nowhere near Trey Lance and Justin Fields, in my opinion, because not just because of that, but that is one of the reasons, right? That matters so much in this offense. You're right, because the drill that we're talking about, Andrew Janako is playing the backside squeeze defensive end, right? So he's either, trying to come underneath and chase the quarterback, and Justin Fields has to outrun him and make the throw, or he's sitting in the throwing lane, and that's where Justin Fields has to stop and deliver it, because if he's throwing over the top there, that ball's going right in the throwing lane. It's going to be picked or batted down. Something bad is going to happen. He's got to get it around him. So
that was fun, man. I think I'm gonna clip football, that. But football, man. See, there's like I like that shit, man, because that's what we like to get into, and it's hard when you're on Zoom and we tried our best. Sorry if the visuals sucked, because we're in these goddamn small boxes. Kel and I have tried for years to try and get out and get some videos out on these turf fields where at Ohio State, where we went to school. I just couldn't get anybody to film it for us, and we're busy with our club sports and stuff. But I'm definitely gonna post that. So anything else from camp that you liked or stood out to you before we get into our final thing?
No, I'm excited, man. I'm excited to watch this game on Saturday, and I'm probably not gonna. Actually, I might watch it all the way through if I'm watching it on TV. I might just be like, I'm watching this damn game, no matter what. But it's such an important season for Bears fans, right? Because we've never been excited to have a quarterback like this, and every fan base has its haters. Like the guy behind us today was like, "Start Trevor Siemian."
Oh my god! And he was serious. I think he was serious.
I think he was too. I'm sure he was. But every Bears fan on draft night, let's take it versus when we got Mitch to when we got Fields. When we got Mitch, we were like, "What the?" And then eventually we wanted to buy into him, and we became a fan, right?
Of course.
And we liked him. But everyone on draft night 2021,
you were surprised at the very least.
When we saw the Bears trade up, and I saw that thing pop across the ticker, I was like, holy, like this is really happening. And I think a lot of the fan base felt that way. So we just want to see so much from him, because he's the first, he's like a beacon of hope for the entire city right now. Like we've never had that as in a quarterback. So yeah, man, I just hope that they can keep him upright, and those guys can separate for him. And I'm not too worried about the production this year. I'm just worried about, can he stay safe? Can he work the pocket? Can he get the ball out? Are his eyes moving fast from progression, from read 1 to read 2? Is he checking down when he needs to? Because accuracy has never been a problem with him. He's never been an inaccurate guy. as much as people want to post that 7-on-7 throw to N'Keal Harry. Everyone has their misses, man. It happens. So, yep, I'm excited, and I'm just ready for football to start.
I know, and it was cool to be in Soldier Field and get that taste of. It's different when you're at training camp, when you're at House Hall, and when you're in the stadium, you're like, okay, like holy crap, the season's a month away. Like we are a month and 2 days away from the Bears' first game, and we're 3 days away from the Bears' first preseason game, where the starters will be playing football. So you're getting pretty much a taste of almost like regular season football with the Bears stars on the field, and you'll see Justin out there too. You said you had something here to close the show out for me. What do you got for me here as we close out the show today?
All right, because I was thinking about this as we were talking about guys who were going to get paid with Roquan. Mm-hmm. So the argument I think it's a very small minority, but there are some people who are not fans of extending him. And I think the argument is just off-ball backer is just not a premium position in the NFL, which is not completely untrue, but Roquan is a premium player at that position. So it's different. That's why guys like Shaquille Leonard and Fred Warner got what they got.
Correct.
So we also said that if Roquan gets paid first, Tremaine Edmonds is probably going to get more money than Roquan just because that's how the market works. So my thoughts was let's go 3 years down the line from today.
Okay.
Who are the highest paid players at each position?
Oh, okay. Wow.
If it takes too much time to get through all, like, we don't have to do like left guard, center, right guard.
In the NFL or on the Bears?
Yeah, in the NFL.
In the NFL?
We could just do interior line, tackles, receivers, backs, quarterbacks, and then like edge rushers, D tackles, linebackers, corner safety. Because I think that would be fun to predict.
Yeah, I gotta think about the guys first. I gotta think about who's. Like it also depends on the timing of the contracts, right? Who's going to be getting the contract at that time. Okay, so let's start at wide receiver because those are the names that I know the most. You think about the guys who just got the extensions: AJ Brown, DK Metcalf. Who else got one? There's one. Debo got it. So some other younger guys who could be eligible to be the highest paid player at that position in 2025. You said 3 years from now, right? It's got to be Jamar Chase, right? It has to be Jamar Chase.
I think so.
Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson.
Yep.
They'd be either of those teams would be absolutely absurd not to give those guys a full extension.
So what do you think that number will be? Okay.
So who is it right? Who's the leader right now?
Tyreek is the leader at 30. Devontae gets 28. Nuke gets 27.3. Cooper Kupp 26.7. And then for the guys who just got extended, AJ Brown gets 25. Terry gets 23. And then let me look up DK Metcalf contract.
In 3 years, Justin Jefferson, or I guess Justin Jefferson, it would be Jamar Chase.
I think Justin Jefferson will get
$37 million.
I think he'll get like 34, and then Jamar will get like 37 after that. I think that's
absurd. Like
this is absurd. And then you got guys like Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle who are probably not going to get like 37, but they're still going to be like high 20s and low 30s. Like they're going to get a lot of money.
It's funny that you bring it up because look, I mean, if we project Darnell Mooney to be as good as what he is, Darnell Mooney could be a $25 million player. I mean, he really could.
He's going to get like 20. Yeah.
He might get more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're telling me AJ Brown just got $25 million, I think Darnell Mooney could be just as productive as AJ Brown by the time he's 20. By the time it's 2025, 3 years from now, like you mentioned. So, okay, so we'll say it's Jamar Chase, but there also could be. It really depends. Like there could be a guy that peaks in his career and signs a new deal, and signs like a record-breaking deal with a different team. Mm-hmm. But we'll go Jamar Chase for wide receiver. Tight end, you got to imagine it's Kittle, right? You got to imagine it's Kittle.
Pitts. I was going to say Pitts.
Oh, shit. Okay.
I think in 3 years, just because he's younger than me and you, like when you think about it that way.
I hate that. You don't got to tell me that. That stuff bothers me now. For my whole life, I've been younger than NFL athletes, and now I'm older than some of them. Ugh. That's weird. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that's the trend because George Kittle's going to get paid, and then Kyle Pitts is going to get paid even more. Yeah. I mean, that guy's a freak of nature. So that one's relatively easy.
Kittle gets 15 right now. Kelsey gets 14.3. So,
It's wide open
yeah.
for Pitts to get like 17 or 18.
Yeah, because he's gonna be like, well, I play receiver too, basically too. So
Yeah,
he might get like
I'm doing
18.
two things right now.
Yeah,
Definitely. I guess before we go to quarterback, let's go to interior line. I mean, Quentin Nelson should be the highest paid player for the rest of time because he's just so fucking good. I mean,
yeah.
that guy is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it just blows my mind every single time that I watch him play. You have to imagine it's him, right?
I think it's him, and then I think right behind him is probably got to be like Creed Humphrey. Trying to think of guys who
Yeah.
had really good starts to their career,
Creed's been
especially
great.
since he's a center. I think they get more. And
Lucas
Quentin
Patrick.
Nelson's contract is going to reset the whole interior line market just because
When is he due for that?
they put the 5th-year option on him. So this year he's set to make 13.7. He was on a rookie contract before that. So
Oh God.
he was making less than $1 million base salary. So if his 5th-year option is 13 million, what do you think Quentin Nelson gets? Or do you want me to go first?
You can go first.
I'm thinking like I think it's going to be around that tight end money. I think he'll get like
I was gonna say
18
that
to
too.
20 just because he's so freaking good, and he'll like no one should pass him up. Like that's going to reset the market, but like he should just be like the highest bar. So Creed, I think when Creed gets paid, if he continues the pace he's been at, I think he'll be right around that number. I think they'll be similar, but I'm trying to think of like Zach Martin is getting old, so he's not going to get that money.
There's a couple other guys that I'm blanking on who have been really, really good. What's Slater plays tackle, right?
Yeah. I was gonna say
Slater's
Ryan
gonna get his
for
money
the Bucks, but he just got
Jensen's like 32 or something.
Yeah,
Isn't he old?
and he just got hurt too. So
he
that's
got
not
hurt too.
happening.
I remember the Bears the Bears to sign him this offseason. And we talked about that, but never came through.
Yeah.
Tackle gets interesting because, you think about the young guys like Piney Sewell.
Mm-hmm.
He's left tackle, right?
Yeah.
I think he's at left, and Slater, I think, is also
Slater's
at left.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those guys because Slater's really good, man. Like, Slater is really good.
Let's pick a right tackle then. Let's pick another one.
Who do we got at right tackle around the league who's a relatively notable name? Where's I Am Scox in the chat? He's the offensive line guru. Get him in here to tell us who are the he says Braxton Jones. Hey, one could only hope. Ryan Ramczyk.
Ramczyk would be
so he's currently the highest paid right tackle, bro, and he's getting paid $19 million. He's paid $19 million. Then Brian O'Neill, Lane Johnson, Taylor Moton.
Yeah.
I don't even know who that is, man. Am I gonna get slandered on TikTok for that because I don't know who Taylor Moton is?
I don't think as bad as Jake got slandered. But there's probably a Panthers fan out there who is not very happy with you right now.
Yeah, sorry. Your quarterback is either Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold. How about Jermaine Fetty? Look at him down there, the 28th paid. Juwan James, Tristan Wirfs. Tristan Wirfs.
I was feeling like I was going through the 2020 class. I was like, Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills, Mekhi Becton. I was like, I'm missing someone.
It's Tristan Wirfs. That's who's gonna reset it. That guy can play. Mekhi Becton has been a flop, or been I don't know. I think he got hurt.
He did. His kneecap is gone, I believe. I feel so bad for that dude because he was gonna be good.
He's just ginormous, dude. All right, so shall we go to quarterback now?
Yeah, discard Mahomes because I think he'll.
Well, how you gonna discard Mahomes? Because
that's no fun.
Because
his base is like what, 50 mil a year? Let's check
something like that. Okay, so because we know he's gonna be the highest paid, right? Like there's no one exceeding him. Is it? Lamar Jackson's due for an extension next year, right?
Yeah, I think he's going to play through the 5th-year option this year. So
obviously, we're talking about Bears DB Lamar Jackson. He's deserving
absolutely.
of all the money of the Bears.
Mhm.
Ryan Poles just needs to go to DB Lamar Jackson, give him a blank check. Say whatever you want, sign it. Josh Allen got his money. He's getting 43 right now. As far as like the average money, I think it's 1 Rodgers, 2 Kyler, 3 Deshaun, 4 Mahomes, 5 Josh Allen, 6 Derek Carr, 7 Matthew Stafford, 8 Dak Prescott, 9 Kirk Cousins, 10 Russell Wilson, 11 Jared Goff. It's actually not outrageous. So it's probably going to be Joe Burrow, right? It's probably going to be Joe Burrow. Or you know who it's going to be, because I think this guy is going to win an MVP this year. Justin Herbert.
Mm-hmm. That's gonna be interesting. See, this is the fun thing about it, I think, because we had the same thing with Goff and Wentz, who have both turned out to be, not very good quarterbacks, unfortunately. But like the 1-2 with them and the money they got, they just keep one up in each other. And then they paid like the vets, because like Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers,
Yep.
Stafford, they all got paid around the Derek Carr, they all got paid around the same. And then they were all getting like 4 years, 5 years, 125. And we were like, whoa, like that's a lot of money. And then the Chiefs went 500 mil 10 years with Mahomes. And then like Josh Allen probably saw that and was sitting there like, dude, I'm about to get 250 million bucks. Like, it was just crazy. So I think it's let's pick a number. Ryan Tannehill's cap hit this year is $38.5 million, by the way, which is the largest in the NFL.
What did you just say to me? What?
Ryan Tannehill's cap hit is $38,600,000.
Nah, I didn't process that. I need you to say it again.
Let me list you. I'm sure you're looking at it too, but
I was looking at Spot Rack.
Yeah, the top 5 are Ryan Tannehill is 1, Patrick Mahomes 2, Kirk Cousins 3.
Oh my God.
Jared Goff 4.
So what
Aaron
bad
Rodgers 5.
do?
And then listen to the next 2, 6 and 7, Carson Wentz and Jimmy Garoppolo.
Oh my God. How is that even possible? Where do you because you can change it to cap hits here. Yeah. I see.
And then so eventually
it's disgusting. Oh my God.
Man. It's gross.
Oh. And where's Fields? Oh my God. Fields is oh my God. Did I miss him? I missed him. I must have missed him.
Control F. Justin Fields, 4,289,000. Below Jacoby Brissett and Baker Mayfield.
Hell yes, bro.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Absolutely fleecing the league with that deal.
That's why next year is so important for Poles, because you have to win you have to compete while your QB's still in that rookie contract. Because think of what the Bengals are gonna have to do, like maybe like somewhere in between a quarter and a half or a third and a half. So let's say 40% of their cap, maybe more, is going to go to 3 players: Joe Burrow, Jesse Bates, if they want to pay him, and Jamar Chase. And hopefully you've got, like a franchise guy on the offensive line that you can pay, because Joe Burrow is just going to keep getting sacked. That's not good. And then obviously they're paying Joe Mixon really good money for a running back right now. And T. Higgins, if they want to keep
pay T. Higgins. That guy's fucking good.
Yeah.
And look, you've already started to see the repercussions of it for the Kansas City Chiefs, right? I mean, look at their offseason this year. Yeah, I don't know how much of their offseason was due to their inability to pay players or their willingness, because what was Tyreek Hill? Did he get a contract extension when he was traded to the Dolphins?
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know if I'm not in tune with, Chiefs media. I don't know if part of that was he requested Tyreek Hill requested the trade from the Chiefs because he knew that they weren't going to pay him the money, because they couldn't, because Patrick Mahomes' cap hit is, what did you say it was? Like something $35 million, right? And it's like, and when you have a team that talented and you got younger guys who you have paid already, and look, they paid Chris Jones. Is he even still on the team anymore? Chris Jones. And then they didn't. Kelsey, did they end up paying Honey Badger? I want to say they ended up, or who signed Honey Badger?
No. Honey Badger's he's on the Saints now, I think, right?
He's on the Saints now, right? I forgot somebody signed him.
But they're in that contract dispute with Orlando Brown right now too. They're scraping to find money. So
exactly.
That's That's so tough. Like, I think Ryan Poles is going to be smart enough. And Ryan Poles, I just hope he's not the guy that like thinks he knows more than everyone else right now. You know,
Yeah, I don't feel that way about him. Do
I
you?
don't either. I don't either. I just hope he's not that guy. You know, and I don't think he will be. So not to put that like bad energy in the air, but this is why 2023 gets me excited is because the Bears have all that money. They're going to be in a position to pick a receiver in the first round, and I hope it's Jackson Smith and Jigba, because I think very well you could have. There was a lot of people who were not like Jamar Chase, wide receiver one.
Correct.
There was the Jalen Waddle, and then there was a Devontae Smith camp. There's going to be the Kayshon Boutte camp, who's the receiver from LSU this year, who I think some people like more than Jackson Smith and Jigba as a prospect. But look at what putting a familiar face in your receiver room does for a quarterback. Because we talked about this last week, is seeing a guy open versus knowing
That
when
was
a
good.
guy is covered but he's
That
open.
was good.
So that's I think where that is important. You got money to pay Darnell Mooney. You got money to hopefully get someone else. Hopefully Larry Bourne, Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins can figure out the tackle spots. You're only on a 1-year contract with Riley Reef, so that's going to free up some space.
You're right.
That'd be
And look,
fun,
this is
man.
you're so right. Now you bring this to my attention. I'm glad we did this. We're doing this little segment because it's like holy shit. You have to kind of open your eyes about, and it's a direct correlation to the Roquan Smith situation. I mean, I think that's why you decided to come up with this,
Yes.
right? Is
Yeah.
Because now you have to understand the implications of a decision like that for Roquan Smith, and like you're going to have to pay Justin at some point. He's going to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL in 3 years. He's going to be. I mean, we both believe that, and he's going to be deserving of the money that a top 10 quarterback should get at that point in time in a couple of years, right? And you have to be really, really careful about what you're doing with your money, because then you could really put yourself into a bad situation. And this is the importance of building through the draft and getting young players and homegrown guys, because you're going to get to a point where if you have a good football team, guess what that means? You got to pay your good football players. Like that's just what's going to happen. If you want to be a good team in 2024, that's going to mean you're paying Justin Fields a lot of money. That's going to mean you're going to probably pay Roquan Smith money. It means you're going to pay Darnell Mooney money. Like, and then once that happens, you're not going to be able to enter off seasons at that point just saying, hey, I'm just going to spend money on free agent X, free agent Y, like all these guys. Like, you're going to have to take what you can get from guys that you drafted in the 3rd round or the 4th round. And
that's
the
why
first
Jacksonville's offseason was just so piss poor, in my opinion.
And that's why
from a signing standpoint.
It's a wrong. It's just a wrong way to do it too. Yeah. Like those. Like you're also like if you're. This is why I have zero problem with the moves that Pace made this offseason. I mean, or not. Oh, fuck me. God damn it. Damn it. I should do a whiteboard. How many times I've done that? I don't think it's been that many, but it's been enough. It's like
we should keep it out.
Yeah, we should. It's happened at least 10 times since he's been hired, which is way too many. I'm sorry. We got 2 Ryan P's. What the hell do you want me to do? Right. But now I forgot what the fuck I was going to say. No, he's looking for this is the importance of value, right? Like think about you when you go to a restaurant, right? And us, we're low on budget. You got to pay bills. We're, you're in college. I'm just out of college. Like I don't got money to just spend on the $13 meal, right? At Wendy's, you got to find value. Hence why they create the 4 for $4, right? You're always looking for value. The best deal in fast food and in food history. Whoever the hell came with the 4 for $4 Hall of Fame, immediate Hall of Fame. Cornelius Squalls, I'm sorry. All right. It slipped through the cracks. But what I'm saying is what Ryan Poles is doing is he's looking for value in players, right? So what that means is, we're not going to immediately, especially at the start of this rebuild, go after a guy who's already going to cost you $80 million. Christian Kirk, a horrible decision. If the Bears signed Christian Kirk to that contract, oh my God, we would be in shambles. That would have been terrible, right?
Yep.
You got to find younger players, guys who are 20, 24, 25, 23, 26, signing for smaller contracts. Try to find value in those guys. How did New England win all those years? Were they spending huge money on free agents every year?
Right.
No. Did it when they needed to? Yes, they definitely did it when they needed to. but they found value in guys who didn't cost that much. And I'm not saying you got to play Moneyball. I'm not saying you got to be Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill and play Moneyball, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you got to be Billy Beane and you got to find a guy who's going to cost you $1 million, but he's, going to get on base 3 times out of 10, like the fucking movie. No, like you got to spend a little bit of money, but the value part is very, very important. And this is what you're talking about when you talk about Roquan Smith is like, is the value there, right? You have to ask that question. Value, is it there? Roquan Smith is asking to be the highest paid linebacker in football. As an off-ball linebacker in the situation that the Bears were in at the start of this rebuild, you ask yourself, is it worth it from a value standpoint?
That's the tough part is we're not trying to – Ryan Poles knows they're not winning this year, right, which is – or the goal probably is to start competing next season. I think we've talked about it. We think they can win 7, 8, maybe 9 games this year. That'd be a really good season for them. But I mean, it's a rebuilding mode. I mean, they traded their best player, who was Khalil Mack. In my opinion, obviously last year with the injury, he wasn't who he usually was.
Correct.
But it is tough, man. It's not a premium position. It's a rough situation, and I do hope they get it done. But then it becomes the same thing, Kevin, because then it becomes, well, now I've got to pay Jalen Johnson.
Exactly.
And there will be some freed cap down the road. Robert Quinn being released will, free up some space, which will probably be a good thing. And it's the same thing why teams don't resign, or not teams don't resign running back, because they do. Because look at Kamara, Joe Mixon.
They shouldn't unless they're a guy like that.
But it's the thing with David Montgomery. Like, are you going to pay him money? When running backs just don't get a lot of second contracts now if you're not that caliber of like Christian McCaffrey. The only offseason wins were Adams and Hill, and the Bears had no chance of getting either of them, which is unfortunate. But it's hard, like, looking down the road because then it becomes not the same thing as the Bengals, because the Bengals have a premium quarterback, 2 premium receivers, and a premium safety. In Jesse Bates, right? So that's where the big thing for them comes from. Well, now the Bears, if you think you've done a good job drafting, you're going to have to pay. This is so far down the road that it's becoming skeptical. But, like, let's say for the sake of the argument, Braxton Jones becomes a top 10 left tackle in the NFL. You have to pay him that money. And if you're going to pay Justin Fields and you want to keep him good, you have to pay Braxton Jones too, or whoever a left tackle, left tackle ends up being. Larry Borum, Tevin Jenkins, that doesn't matter. You have to pay that man. You have to pay Darnell Mooney. And then, like, let's say they get a really good receiver in free agency, you have to pay him. And that's where the same thing comes from. Value in rookies, because T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, and Jamar Chase are all on rookie contracts right now. That's what makes it so important. Jesse Bates just finished his rookie contract, which is where the holdout in the franchise tag is coming from. But the window starts when you believe you've got a guy at quarterback, because the Chiefs, that's how the Chiefs did it. That's why the Chargers are going all out right now. That's why the Chargers are doing it, because they've got Justin Herbert, a guy who is going to make $40 million when he gets his contract a year. In the Braxton love. You're welcome, Skokes. I like that guy today in practice. I was pretty pleased with him. But
who, Skokes? You saw Skokes out on the field there?
No. I bet you I would be impressed with him though. But we'll have to. You got to send us some tape, Skokes. We got to see. We got to see what's going on with you. Maybe you can play center for the Bears.
Yeah, it might be better than Mustafa. But,
yeah, But it becomes a thing for all these teams. It's why Jacksonville thought they were doing a good job by spending all this money while they had it, but they didn't get players that were worth the value, in my opinion. But the Jets are doing
the value, exactly. See, but here's the problem with the narrative, Kellen, is if you were to ask any person who had the better offseason this year, Jacksonville or Chicago, I mean, how many of them are going to say Chicago? None, right? Like, every one of them is going to say Jacksonville solely because there's dollar signs on the board for them. Like, that's the only reason. Like, you have to look at this like 3 years down the road. You will go back to this offseason. And then I'll ask you that question again and say, who had the better offseason? Did the Bears pay a guy like Christian Kirk, who's not worth it, $75 million? Did they pay? They pay, who else did they pay for? They paid for some other guys who just really, weren't worth it given their situation, right? Like, and this is why the whole process that the Bears had makes sense. This is why I was fine with them trading Khalil Mack because you're unloading his contract, because you have to establish first that you have a contending team. And I think they're going to establish that. And then, exactly like you said just 2 minutes ago, you can be the Chargers. You just have to wait. You don't spend the money at the beginning of a rebuild. It's not insane logic. Like, if and look, do I want Roquan to be a Chicago Bear? Yes, I do. Like, don't get it twisted. I do. And if this were next year, everything's the same except it's next year, and the Bears are a little bit better. They had a good season. If it's next year, oh my God, they would have paid him immediately, right? We wouldn't be at this point if it was next year, because the situation's different. But right now, it's not as easy. I'm not saying they shouldn't pay him. I'm just saying, like I said in the beginning of the show, I'm going to reiterate the tongue twister until it's done. This isn't easy. Like, given his situation, and I think he's smart for doing this. Like, it's not easy to just, when you have a value-based mindset, it's never going to be an easy decision for you to give away that much money, especially if you don't think he's 1,000% worth it as the top player at his position, which is what he's asking for. We're not saying he's not worth it as the third best player at his position. We're questioning if he's worth it as the top player at his position, right? And it's nothing against him. Like, this isn't anything against Roquan Smith. It's just the mindset that Ryan Poles is having is cautious and it's strategic. And there's so many fans, Khaled, today. We walked in that stadium, and the first thing I asked you when we sat down was, do you think Ryan Poles gets booed today?
Yeah.
And he did not. Maybe because they didn't put him on the Jumbotron or anything. People might not even know he was there.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't understand. Like, make it make sense.
Here's some
Why
more
are people upset?
Here's some more hypocrisy, too, is like, I think a lot of the stuff in the offseason was like, the Bears didn't hire an offensive mind. They didn't get Brian Dable. They didn't get Doug Peterson. They went with a defensive-minded coach. And they're like, they didn't spend money on the offensive side of the ball. They, did all these things that didn't help Justin Fields. And then, it becomes like, and people will respond to this and say like, well, Roquan's a really good player. You need him. Sure, absolutely. But, I mean, you do have to pick your battles, right? And I think the Cowboys kind of had to do it too. They had to offload Amari Cooper because they had to pay him. They're going to have to pay CD, and they paid Gallup, who unfortunately is hurt right now. But that's part of the game, and you let guys go because of that, and you have to find your money in other places. The Cowboys are going to have to pay Micah Parsons ridiculous money in 3 years too. That's going to be insane because they're already paying Dak a lot of money. They paid Zeke a second contract, so.
Bad decision. Tony Pollard might be.
You just have to be. I think football in the NFL is so different. Basketball, friggin' guys like Mike Conley are making more than like 95% of the NFL, and in baseball, there's no salary cap. So it's so different because the parity is unlike anything else in American professional sports because of the salary cap and because of what each position means on a football field. And all 22 positions don't have the same value or impact on the field. That's not saying that they're all not important, but are you going to sit here and tell me that, the best, Roquan Smith deserves to make the money of a quarterback? And I don't think anyone's saying that. It just positional value means something. And I think that's the cautious part of polls right now. Is, like, what if Roquan is asking for 5 years, 110, 115? Fred Warner's getting, what do we say, 95, 91, something like that. Like, it just wouldn't make a lot of sense, especially if you plan to splurge on Justin Fields' side of the ball next offseason. Now, if you can still do that if you sign Roquan, but then you just become – Then you become like the Saints and these guys who are really under the cap. Now, if Ryan Poles is a genius at working the cap, that's fine. You can be, or like how the Rams have it now. I don't know how they're doing what they're doing. They're just getting money out of thin air. But you got to pay Jalen Johnson, and then eventually, if Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker got to become keystones down the stretch, that's what happens. I think a big thing with that with Ryan Pace was Adrian Amos. I really wanted Adrian Amos to stay on the Bears. And they had to let him go. And basically we did a swap with the Packers, and Clinton Dix wasn't as good as Adrian Amos. And that defense kind of took a hit in 2019 because of that, because you paid Eddie Jackson, because, you planned on paying Tariq Cohen and these things. So the salary cap was what makes football fun. It's what makes these arguments happen. If we didn't have a salary cap, the Cowboys would win the Super
championship
Bowl
every
every year. And I guess
Well, I don't know. The Yankees don't win the World Series every year, but
yeah, they sure don't.
They sure don't. They're not even close. But the last thing I'll say before we probably should end it here. We've been going a while, but we've been having fun, man. This is great. This is great stuff. Is like a lot of the Bears fans who are upset at Ryan Poles, and I think you mentioned. I think you said it's hypocrisy, right? And I think it's hypocrisy in this way. It's the reason that you wanted Ryan Pace out of the building is exactly the opposite of what Ryan Poles is doing. You wanted Ryan Pace out of the building because he was spending too much money and he was losing your draft capital. He was trading picks away, right? And there's nothing to work with. And you're like, what are you doing? Why are you trading all these picks away for guys like Jakeem Grant or Khalil Mack at the time, or you're paying all this money for guys like Jimmy Graham who aren't worth it. And now Ryan Poles is doing the exact opposite. He's keeping his picks. He's gaining picks. He's trading guys away.
He did a great job in the draft. People might not like
picks back,
but to get the capital he did was pretty good.
And I will actually, here's a question for I Am Scocks in the chat. Was that Braxton Jones pick one that they already had, or is that one he created? Because if Braxton Jones turns out to be a Pro Bowl left tackle, like, come on, man. He created that. He got you that pick by trading down, right? And that might be a strength of his. But what I'm just trying to say is, like, you can't be mad at Ryan Poles for what he's doing if you were so mad at Ryan Pace for what he did. Spending all that money and trading away picks and leaving you with nothing every draft and leaving you with no money. And then you're like, oh shit, what are we going to do for the next 5 years? Like every year was for the now. Like finally, Ryan Poles has a vision that's forward thinking. He's being cautious with his money. He's being cautious with his draft capital. He's saving drafts. He's gaining draft capital to get players on rookie contracts who will be on your team with immense value when you are in a Super Bowl window. Why are you upset? Why? It doesn't make any sense. It's so hypocritical. It makes no sense. I'm Scocks. We traded back from 155 to win season. I think it's snagged Braxton. So yes, Braxton Jones was a player they wouldn't have even had unless they traded back and got all those extra picks, man. Like, this is how you win. This is what the good teams do. And there's going to be people who say, Kellen, like you mentioned, well, what are you talking about? The Rams? What about the Rams? Look at what they're doing. Well, like, they had to do this. They had to start somewhere. They had to build this thing up. The Rams out of thin air weren't a 6-11 team and then just spent money and are now a Super Bowl champion. Like, yeah, they got the biggest piece they needed in that. They traded for Matthew Stafford, right? And that was the biggest piece. But if you think about that franchise in general, they had to build that up from the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Like every franchise does. You got to do this through the draft. You can't spend too much money at the start of the rebuild. So I feel like I sounded really nerdy about a rebuild. And this is what happens. We've been doing a podcast, pretty enthusiastic podcast for an hour 27 minutes.
Absolutely. Last thing I'll say is I think it's important, especially when we're talking about the draft. Chris Morgan, who's the offensive line coach, I said this before, I think is the most important coach in the building that's not Flus or Luke Getsy. He might even be more important than Luke Getsy, especially going forward, because if we think Getsy's the guy he is, he's going to get a head coaching offer, right?
Right.
So if you're a guy that can really develop football players and talent, you create – let's not take Braxton Jones now. Let's take a guy like Ja'Tyre Carter, a guy who is a backup guard right now. But, let's say Whitehair's contract, runs up and he's gone. I think Schofield was only a 1-year deal. Right?
Yes, 1 year.
So now you've got to rebuild your interior offensive line. You've got Lucas Patrick, who is going to be the center of that. But let's say Chris Morgan is a guy that can really develop. Well, now you've got, let's say, Braxton Jones at left tackle, and I'm only going to take one of the rookies. I'm not going to say like Kramer Thomas and Ja'Tyre Carter all-star, because I don't think that's what it is. Then you put Ja'Tyre Carter at one spot, and you've got another one of either Larry Borum or Tevin Jenkins. That's 3 guys on a rookie contract that are solid players that are starter level for you. Now you can upgrade other positions. Now you can go get a good receiver. Now you're and you create trade value for a guy who doesn't play. Like let's say it's Larry Borum, for example. Let's say Larry Borum doesn't start, but he's still good enough to do that, and he puts out good tape in the preseason or whatever. Now you create a trade value for an extra body that you don't need. So Chris Morgan, you have an important job going forward. Not only are you holding up Justin Fields and our entire livelihood and the hearts of Bears fans, but you create a lot of value because people will pay big time for, regular offensive linemen. So Yes. Hopefully a
And
great right guard. Yes.
what you are saying is almost the most important element of what we just talked about for the past 30 minutes is, well, we just talked about value for 30 minutes and, how do you create that, right? Because how do you create that? Well, you create it by taking guys who were late round draft picks or guys who you were cut from a team and are coming here for a second opportunity, or who maybe weren't cut but weren't due for a big time contract. So you're paying them a little bit of money, you're not paying them anything crazy. And you turn him into a guy who's worth more than what you were paid for. And then, how do you do that, right? Through coaching, through development.
Yep.
What the hell was Matt Nagy so bad at last year and in his whole career and his whole training staff or his whole coaching staff? He didn't know how to develop players.
Yeah.
That was the problem.
Yeah.
You're paying too much for guys. Like, you paid Eddie Jackson, who is deserving of that money. Don't get me wrong. That player regressed.
Yep.
So then you were starting to lose value.
Nobody ever took a big step either. Like,
no one took a big step.
Mitch never took a big step. Anthony Miller never took
There's a couple of guys. There's a couple guys.
Like who, though?
I mean, yeah. Roquan Smith took some steps.
But Roquan Smith is good already, though.
Right, right. I guess.
Let's take a guy like Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney was drafted
Sure.
late because he was skinny and out of a small school like Tulane in the South. He was always good. He was gonna be what he was. Obviously, he had to get you had to learn the playbook, and you got guys that have to teach that. But like, no one really took that step because Leno and Massey were good in 2017 before Nagy got here. I mean, who else? Like, James Daniels never took a big step, and that would have been really important if he did. He would have been a really good piece of the interior line, and he never did. And so the Bears, they let him go. Like, there was never really big improvement. Maybe like a guy like Bilal Nichols, like, who kind of really came into his own that last year of the contract, but like, that's such a like Joel Iyiegbuniwe. We looked at that 2018 class the other day. We only got one guy on the team, and he's asking for a trade right now. Like, you have to be able to develop even at the NFL level. That's why you get paid to coach at the NFL level. It doesn't matter if those guys are 22, 23, 24. Now, obviously, you're going to have to aim your training and development at the younger guys more so than the older guys. But that has to be important amongst your staff, is to develop young football players. And that's where I think the big thing with Poles and his office and Eberflus and his coaching staff, they have to really understand who are the guys that we're going to draft late that we think, like Braxton Jones, who are guys that probably need a little bit of development, but we can turn them into something good. That's where I think the beauty of good NFL football teams comes from.
Absolutely. You want to have players that are so good. You develop so many players to create more value that you can't afford them in a couple of years. So you can't afford everyone. Yeah. Like, I know that sounds like it's not right, but like, you want to get to the point where you have so many guys who have elevated their value that you can't even afford all of them.
And then you get comp picks out of them, or you get them in trade value or whatever.
Exactly. So exactly. It's and as we've been talking about this, for those who are listening, I hope you guys agree that, like, I'm not upset with the vision here. I'm not upset with what Ryan Poles has done. It makes sense to me, right? Does it all make sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah. He's had to bite the bullet in places that we haven't wanted him to, and it just sucks. We just have to live with it.
You just got to live with it, and this is what happens when you're in a situation. You got, like, Bears fans, I want us to win so badly right now, and I do. And I want us to act like that team. I do. I want us to. I wish you could have kept Khalil Mack. I wish you could have kept Allen Robinson somehow. I wish you could have kept Roquan, or maybe still keep Roquan Smith, right? And all these guys. And I wish, who else left? A bunch of people left. Too many. Eddie Goldman retired, didn't he? Didn't Eddie Goldman retire?
Eddie Goldman did retire. He did.
Yeah. Akeem Hicks. I don't know, but
that's a good one.
You got to understand that this is just the way it is. This is just the way it is. And the sooner you come to accept that, the sooner you feel a hell of a lot better about what the Bears are doing. And, like, it's not to say that this year they're going 0-17 either. Like, we look at the roster that they have, and we still can find a way, if they play to their potential, for them to win 7, 8, or 9 games. Like, legitimately. Like, still, given everything that's gone on, we still, I think it might change if Roquan's gone. But if Roquan's still here, we can still find a way for them to win that many games at the start of their rebuild. So I promise you, Bears fans who are listening to this, it's not as bad as you think. It is not as bad as you think. I know we've been a quote on what some would call a poverty franchise, for some time now, but things are changing a little bit. Everyone in the chat, you guys are amazing. We've been doing this for an hour 30. You guys are all still here, popping in your comments and your questions with enthusiasm. Cornelius Squalls with the exclamation points, what we like to see, reciprocating the energy that Colin and I have put on for this show. And look, man, I could go for another hour 30. I could go for 2 more hours. We keep going. But your boy got to eat some shrimp. He's hungry as fuck after a long day at Soldier Field in the sun and then working afterwards. But be sure to subscribe to the channel. This will not be the last time Kellen and I will be live. Kellen making more and more appearances on the channel. We're going to make a different video out of that throwing motion one, and I think we're going to make a separate one out of this little contract cap space talk we had, because that was phenomenal stuff, and I think we debunked the myth going around about the Chicago Bears right now. But good stuff today, man. A lot of fun being out at Bears camp with you, and a lot of even more fun talking about it here on YouTube. Appreciate your Cornelius Squalls.
Appreciate you, man.
To you.
Love it. Especially with all the hate I've been getting. I appreciate some love.
Yeah. Kellen it's not looking good for him on the internet right now. Yeah, be all right. Brush it off. You got to get used to it in this industry. You can't please everyone. Sure. You can barely please anyone, honestly. You can barely please anyone in this world. But for myself, for Kellen, this has been Bears Nation Podcast, post-training camp edition. We will see you guys next week. Take care.